Welcome back, Mere Mortalites, to another edition of the Mere Mortals book reviews. I have one that you might be hearing a little bit more about because I've been reading plenty of him. Anthony Horowitz. This is the second book in the Alex Rider series, Point Blanc. There are 14 books out there, so will I do all 14 book reviews? Stay tuned, but I will mix them up because these are all very similar. They're all youth fiction, but I will spice them up, so stay tuned for a little bit more philosophical conversations about it. However, you heard me talking, if you have listened to the book review for Stormbreaker, Anthony Horowitz, Alex Rider character and the books, they're phenomenal, at least for me. They really hooked me in when I was younger, and as an adult, I still, when I find the time, I'll go back and have a quick read because they are a really quick read. This particular one, so Point Blanc, which means the white point in French, is 250 pages, but the writing is huge, right? Like the actual text is massive. So you can get through these ones really, really quick. And in true Anthony Horowitz fashion, this is just a thriller fiction type of book. And again, it follows this young Alex Rider, 14 years old, and it follows him again through a particular adventure. And I'm not going to dwell on too much of what that adventure is. Very, very briefly, he goes on the cover as the son of a billionaire, and then has all these fun interactions with his particular daughter, and starts having some sexual chemistry throughout this particular book. He goes off to investigate this school up in the Alps. Things don't seem too weird until he starts to see some guns, and he climbs up this chimney. He finds this interesting things that are happening with DNA and people's faces changing. He manages to get off this particular mountain by riding a sword up ironing board with a diamond sword that he got given. That probably seems one of the more crazier parts of this whole entire book, but of course still fiction, youth, and it made me excited even to today. And at the very end, he ends up battling himself as his genetic twin DNA that's been pulled from him, and all these various imperfections of him have been built to a clone. So I just gave away a lot of the book. Obviously, this was written in 2001, so if you either didn't read this, you weren't a fan of Anthony Horowitz, or if you're just stumbling upon him, then there you go. My apologies. But all in all, look, it's a fiction book. It's always going to be really, really fast-paced, lots of action, short chapters, always something going on. This one's no exception. And as the books go on, just to give you a little bit of an insight, they become maybe a little bit more mature, less of the constant action and a little bit of character development, but it never really goes away, that really fast, punchy action type book. So that's what it is. However, so one concept from Point Blanc that I thought I'd talk about was this cloning, this DNA sequencing conversation that falls into it. So in the story, to give a few more specifics, let's see if I can remember this correctly, because it was written in 2001. So the whole principle of this Dr. Grievous, this person who was looking after the school that was on the top of the mountain of Point Blanc, was he wanted to grab all these delinquents, all these people who were shoplifting, specifically teenagers, bring them to the school. His whole plan was he was going to grab their DNA, take photos of everything of what they looked like, create this cloned copy, and turn them into these kids that were coming in, hold the real ones hostage some way, maybe shoot them, whatever, and send the clones of himself so that he could create this better new world in the way that he wanted, at least he himself, and his kids would go out and actually proliferate and go and make that happen, because they'd be going back to really powerful, rich, wealthy families. And even back then, thinking around the concept of CRISPR, I believe even then it was known around Dolly the sheep that was being cloned, or at least, it's referred to in the book, so would have had to be. And the Dr. Grievous, talking about that, yes, sheep were cloned, but however, I've been able to clone humans, and I've cloned myself X amount of times so I can build up to this plan. Again, that's all the fiction, but I'll pause it there. However, the concept that seemed interesting to me, even then as it does now, was the concept of he was grabbing, so the idea of why parents were sending their kids to this particular school was, hey, this person's acting out badly, they're doing this thing incorrectly, the grades maybe are horrible, and they've got a lot of money, so they go and send them to this place, and this place finishing school, would take them for a couple of months and then send them back to their parents, and there would be this perfection. So any imperfection in the way that they might act or they might relate or that they do just in the day-to-day life, all gone. They're all perfect. Carbon copy, exactly what you might imagine a perfect human to be if you've written it down in stone. Now, look, as a parent, I would say, man, bullshit. There's no way that would get past me. And indeed, the book at the very start kind of talks about how one individual, Paul Roscoe, fell down an elevator to die. However, he was starting to question and called MI6 to see what was going on. And another general in Russia, but also had spotted like, it's a bit strange. My kids come back and it's not exactly, what you'd expect them. But all the rest of them, all the parents who had all these other kids, they just went, oh yeah, the kid's come back. He's acting too perfect, incredibly non-himself. And some parts of the book say, well, that's what you would expect if your kid came back and if nothing had changed, then you'd be concerned. If something had changed, then you went, oh, fantastic, it works. But I call bullshit. There's no way these parents wouldn't have known, straight away that something was off, even if this person was perfect. But the concept of perfect or of your kid coming back and being completely flawless, that was a concept and I guess a philosophy I wanted to explore more, and something that maybe a young one kind of picked up and went, oh, it's kind of interesting. Now the older one goes, okay, that's enough of something to have a conversation. And the point of that is where we fast forward to today, in that, let's take a weird example. Filters on Instagram or social media, Snapchat, whatever. People use filters, and that might be to color correct, but more often than not, it's to remove blemishes. It's to get closer towards perfection, to less uniqueness, I would say, to more being the same as everybody else, which to everyone else's expectation is maybe flawless skin, flawless color, a more tanned look, looking the same, being closer to the societal standard, whatever the case you might consider. There is this view now, let's just take those specifics I gave, to want to be more like everybody else or to look a little bit better than what you actually do, uniquely so, to go towards that flawlessness. And capturing it as part of the book, I went to the thought process of reading it now, not younger self, but now, is that it was the kind of individuality of Alex Rider and some of the others in this particular book that either gave them the strength or the reason for actually acting out in a different way. That in itself kind of gives me a comparison to today's world, where you have a lot more influencers, you have a lot more individuals who are in the popular eye, where the general trend, I'll give a rough percentage, let's say 85%, very much the same, where they're doing things or they are performing or they are acting so that they seem flawless to the followers, or they seem more congruent with what everyone else should be doing. And I think that garners a lot of following, so whatever. But the whole concept of DNA and uniqueness is that you are unique. There are these differences. There are imperfections, which has its strength in some parts. So the other side, let's just say the 15% of other influencers, people who create content, etc., they trend towards showing their true self, all the way from the warts, the issues, the imperfections, the failures. I don't know if it's because I follow along to a lot of those individuals. I'll call out a couple. Nick Bear, Ryan Holiday does this a lot. Tim Ferriss does this a lot. Chris Williamson definitely does this a lot. So there's a lot of individuals like this who talk a lot about the problems and the issues, and while they might be successful in whatever endeavors that they're chosen, there's also a lot of hardship and uniqueness that comes along with that, just like absolutely everyone else. In the principle in this book is like, most humans want to trend toward, you want to be perfect. And I see that in today's world in some aspects of it. And I think that's wrong. And I think that's incorrect. I think that the more we trend towards wanting to be perfect, wanting to look like a carbon copy of whatever you want, from a trend being a Kardashian to a Hollywood actor to, I think I saw something recently, we're in 2025 right now, and what most people want to be right now is a YouTube influencer or an influencer or a doctor. I think those are kind of like the top three things, whichever way you look at it across the world. And parts of that make me think, is most humans out there really want to do that because they know what it entails. And not everyone has ever through history really known this answer. Again, you're asking young people. However, is it what they want, the outcomes and the accolades and the greatness that comes with that? Do they want that? And what are they going to pay? Or are they not aware of that they're going to have to pay to go through that phase? But at the same time, are they just assimilating or trying to craft themselves into this other human that they're not really them, just because they think that that is perfection or the holy grail or what people should be going towards or striving towards? Are you putting yourself in a position, ultimately, like Point Blanc, where you are wanting to go through this crucible or through this exercise or through this activity so that you can come out the other end and be perfect and be amazing and be the right person for an influencer or whatever it is that you're deeming important and wanting to do? And my take is, rather than looking at it that way, I think you need to just scratch deeper into the surface of oneself and actually find the individuality, the importance of why your uniqueness comes. And then, yes, sure, maybe go down those paths of striving, of using the influencer as an example. Be an influencer, fine, but display your uniqueness to it. And going back to the example I gave on the actual filters and the face and changing of what that potentially looks, again, looking at what the outcome of that is so important. Is the outcome there to just pretend to look perfect for a particular reason so that you may assimilate and garner the support and the help from others or the appreciation from others? Okay. And again, I'm not saying right or wrong, right? I'm just saying it is what people do. If you go down the path, right, and you achieve the outcomes, there is at some point, someone's going to come calling when they see the reality of who you are, in person generally, because through the digital world and digital medium, okay, it's a bit hard. You can get away with trying to be as perfect as possible. But at some point, again, in the future, we might all integrate into data chips and BAI, and then this is a whole different conversation. But for the moment, we're still living in a terrestrial world. And as you start interacting with humans on a day-to-day basis, right, mere mortalites in person, you might be thinking you're going to get found out. You're going to be maybe shy to release your inner self and be who you are. This can go all the way through to relationships. And that concept of perfectionism, of blending in, feels like it should be a good thing, because then you'll be liked and supported in the ways that you might want. But I think ultimately faces the challenges that without you being the individual who you are, you miss essentially who you actually are. If you've ever been asked a question, or ask it to yourself right now, if you think around, who are you right now listening to this particular book review and now turned into a bit of philosophy? Who are you, right? Are you your name? Are you what you do? Are you your job? Are you what you're studying? Are you what you like? Are you your body? And again, as you start going deeper, the realization that you might not be your name because that's what's given to you. You're not really your body because, again, that was generated through DNA in your birth and you've had a hand in it for sure. But who are you truly? And are you putting yourself into positions and actions where you are attempting to go through this point blank assimilation, perfectionism that isn't actually striving to the point that you want it to be, and instead for what others want to be? So I know it was a bit of a stretch coming from the Alex Rider Point Blanc book, but weirdly enough, it's just what I really thought about that this particular book. So I was thinking about that particular theory or idea. The other one, of course, was DNA, and in today's world, Dr. Grievous had to, split up his body and try to get the photos of all these different kids and put himself into that position where I'm thinking like, man, nowadays, if you really wanted to do this, you could probably just start creating robots and in a couple of years, just upload your sentience or your parts of your DNA and off you go. You've got a truckload of mini robots running around. So if this book had been written in 2025, we might have had a very different storyline, probably one that would have been much more successful. So Point Blanc by Anthony Horowitz. Again, book review part, it does what you'd expect. It's a youth fiction book, has lots of action through it. Fantastic. It's a good read. You'll get through it probably in a day or two. From a theory perspective or the philosophy perspective, I just like to explore that particular concept. It's all filled in. It's got some rough edges, but it's just something that I like to enjoy and talk about. For now, I will leave it there. Point Blanc, Anthony Horowitz. Thank you very much. Be well. Mere mortalites wherever you are in the world. One out.